All right, well, I told you if all the snow went away before this weekend, we were going to check on the wheat and the hay. Hard to believe that 6 days ago we had anywhere between 6 to 8 inches of snow, more if you went further north, and it hurt to walk outside if the wind was blowing. And now I'm out here talking to you in a sweatshirt and there's no snow other than where it was piled from people plowing their driveways. The wheat, this field I did not get planted on video, but obviously this is the field where I took all the trees out. I wasn't even thinking I was going to get this field planted, and then I got done planting beans, or I got done cutting beans, and that next day after work, moved to 7300 home. It was supposed to be raining, and it wasn't. And I had Dad help me move the 7300 home, and the 1950T was already hooked up to the disc, and it had to come back this way anyhow. So I was like, fuck it. I sent Dad back with the disc, had him disc this. I brought the drill home and went over it real quick because it was still full of seed, and got it planted. I planted it in the dark, so I'm actually impressed I didn't have any skips or anything. It is a lot easier running that drill in the dark behind just a disc instead of the mulcher or the basket, because you can actually see the tire track in the dark. When I run it behind the column mulcher or the basket in the dark, the ground's firm enough it doesn't leave much of a tire track, and you can't see the contrast in the little whoop-de-doo that the tire leaves. But it's coming up good. This field got planted, would have been damn near 2 weeks after I've got the first wheat in, I think. I forgot to write down the dates I planted wheat. I'd be able to go back on my videos and look at them and know for sure, but right offhand I can't remember. It's got a little bit of yellow to it. It does appear that it might have got a little frost bit, which doesn't surprise me, but wheat's kind of built for that. It was really fun planting this, though. It was, I don't know, by the time I finally got rolling on it, it was about 7 o'clock at night, because I think, yeah, it was about 7 o'clock at night, pitch black. There were some stars out, not much of a moon, 50-something degrees out, so I was down here in a t-shirt just hauling ass. It was neat. I wouldn't want to plant a whole field in the dark like that, because, man, you really got to be on the ball watching that tire track with them 6-volt lights. But it is a nice little stand. It'd be nice if it had a little bit more growth on it, but we are still leaps and bounds ahead of where we were last year. Since last year, I got wheat planted on November 6th, if I remember right. The 6th and the 7th, I think. I think it took me 2 days. And it didn't even get sprouted till the middle of December, and the only reason it got sprouted in the middle of December was we had a week where it got up to 50-something degrees. So nothing to complain about this year. We got growth before December. This year was actually an excellent year for wheat as far as getting it planted and getting it out of the ground, because it stayed, you know, upper 40s, low 50s at night, and upper 60s during the day, clear up until like that first week of November, whenever that snow started. So normally you'd like to see a little bit of, if possible, you'd like to see a little bit of tillering before it goes dormant, but in this area it's kind of hard to, I shouldn't say it's hard to do that in this area, but since wheat's kind of the bastard child, I guess you call it the bastard child crop, because most guys are more concerned about the fact that our harvest window is kind of short and just getting beans cut rather than planting wheat. So really anytime you can get wheat in the ground and get it out of the ground before snow flies and it has to go dormant, you're doing good. But I don't see anything to complain about here. It ought to be a nice little stand. Walking around, the only thin spot I see is the same spot right up here where the beans were thin for some reason. There's a really sandy spot right here. This isn't overly heavy ground right here, or in this field to begin with, but there's right up here on this rise, there's like a sand pocket that's just kind of out of place. But since most of the soil around here is a glacial parent material, whether it be till or outwash, we just have all sorts of goofy soil changes. Right here, you can see it, that little, you got that little low spot right there, and then it jumps up, and then there's sand, and then like right here it transitions back to a clay loam, and there's just this little sand triangle right here. And it's a fairly decent stand, but you can tell it's thinner than where it is where the soil gets heavier. I figured when I planted this, I was like, well, because I was basically trying to race a rain to get this in, because it was supposed to start raining the next day. It was supposed to be raining on the night I planted it. It didn't, which is why the only reason I got it planted when I did. But I figured if nothing else, plant it for a cover crop. But it's a good stand, so we're gonna let her ride. Get fertilizer on it in the spring, and that, or naturally we had our November snow, and now there's no more snow in the foreseeable forecast, and it's supposed to stay in the upper 30s, low 40s, if not warmer. I think today it's damn near 50. So we're probably not going to have any snow for Christmas. Naturally, we had our snow in November that nobody wanted, and when everybody wants snow, it ain't going to be there. But if it dries out enough to get over this stuff without, well, I don't know, because I'd really like to throw that fertilizer on my finance for next year. So say if it stays dry enough to get over it with a spreader, I'd fertilize it yet this winter. That way it's there when it breaks dormancy. But I also like to throw it on next year's taxes and whatnot. So and I know this, it's not worked down the flattest, but I was just trying to get weed in the ground. I wasn't trying to make it look pretty. I am really impressed. So this is a pretty decent looking stand of wheat. So anyhow, 8 minutes of looking at 2 acres is enough. So we're gonna run down the road here. We'll check out the field at Grandma and Grandpa's. We'll swing by the hay field on the way to the last field, and then we'll end up there at the last field. So moving on, children. Okay, here was the first one planted. You can tell we're finally starting to get some water, because naturally all the wet spots now are standing full of water. So figure on losing whatever's planted there. Actually, it's probably already dead. And here's my lime. It's now too wet to get it spread. Not the lime's not too wet. You can spread that as wet as you want, but the ground is too wet to get it's I don't know, it's hard to tell. It's too wet to work any ground. My biggest fear would be the one field that needs lime is that last cornfield I shelled where I was cutting ruts. I don't know if I'd get over it. Maybe if I did, I'd probably almost have to run two loads over there rather than one load. And actually I'd probably at 1.5 tons, and I think that's a 6-ton spreader, so I'd be at a little over 2 loads anyhow on that field. I just don't know if I could get over it without getting stuck. What I need to do, and what I'm hoping to do this winter, but I got a lot of little projects planned for this winter, is get a 2-speed PTO off of a 2105 so the paint matches. Get a 2-speed PTO for the 4150, Because if I had that thing spread fertilizer with a 540 PTO, I'd spread lime right now and not worry about it whatsoever, because that thing would float across anything. And it'd pull through pretty much anything. So, especially with a spreader. But it's only got the 1,000 RPM. It's a 1,000 RPM only PTO unit, and the clutch is screwed up so it doesn't shut off anyhow. So, but I gotta walk back up here on the hill, because it seems like about every night I come out here, there's somewhere between 8 and 12 deer out here munching, and I just want to know how bad they got it. I also need to look and keep an eye out for skips. That might be a skip right there, where the drill was doing its thing. And it looks like that might be a little skip right here. Yeah, so there's some skips. I think I got that figured, or not figured out, I think I got it solved. But I was drilling in the dark last time I did it, so I couldn't tell. I took a inch or inch and an eighth or whatever size washer I needed to fit on that shaft. Can't remember what the shaft size was. Basically whatever the standard thickness of a standard hardware washer is. Inch or inch and an eighth, whatever size the shaft was. I think it was inch and an eighth. Put that on there to tighten up the spring a little bit, and it seemed to solve the problem, but it was kind of hard to tell because I was drilling in the dark. And I was spending a lot more time making sure I was on my mark than looking back at the drill. So, but I also didn't see any skips while we were walking around out there, so I'm guessing that means we got it. I saw one more hunk of brick. Where was it? A piece of glass. Don't need that getting in the tire, but where was that hunk of brick? I was walking that way, and I saw it right there. I guess it's not a hunk of brick, it's just flat out a hunk of concrete. There's lots of deer tracks out here. Told my cousin he needs to get a trail cam out here, because he hunts and he's always looking for more property. And you wouldn't be able to use a rifle out here. You might be able to get away with a shotgun, but because well, there's a house there, Granddad's house there, there's a house back there, there's a house back over there. So with a gun, you'd have to be really careful which direction you shot in, if you shot at all. The only upside being, if you put your blind right there on that hill, no matter where you shot, you'd be shooting down, so that would be good. But either way, Granddad doesn't want anybody. He was one of the guys I used to work with. He was going to let him bow hunt, but he didn't want anybody rifle hunting out here for obvious reasons. So this doesn't have, of course this is a lot higher ground. This field doesn't really have the yellow tint to it like that other one did. So it must not have got the frost hit. Again, this field's not worked down the flattest, but it worked down and it's planted. I didn't want to work it a whole lot just because of how wet it was. Don't want to create none of that compaction. Still a good looking stand of wheat though. It's a lot better population than, I can already tell it's a lot better population than what I had last year, just because of the way it had to, well, just because of the way it didn't come out of the ground until December. I really probably should, I've been planting 120 pounds an acre. I should probably bump that up to 150, and I might have a better stand. Although 2 years ago when I had the 40 acres that my uncle's planted, I planted that to 120. It came out, I got it planted about the time I got this planted this year. It came out of the ground and made it to about this stage before it went dormant. And hell, 2 years ago, that wheat went, it's like 75, 80 bushel an acre. So, I mean, does it really warrant planting another 30 pounds an acre? I don't know. One year, yes. The next year, no. So, anyhow, that's this field. So, maybe a freaking hunk of brick. Maybe what I need to do is get me one of them goofy ass selfie sticks so that I could walk around with the camera out like this, pointing at me the whole time, talking rather than pointing at the shit that's actually important. Maybe that's what I ought to do. All the big farming channels that have them 100,000, 200,000 subscribers, they always spend more time with the camera out like this, pointing at themselves, than they do with the camera actually pointed at the equipment or the shit that people actually care about. Anyhow, Teeter, come on, we gotta go. She's on the scent of them deer. That dog will track deer like you wouldn't believe. No, I got probably 6 or 7 that like to hang out in my backyard at night. And it's like they got a damn game going, because they know damn well when I pull in the driveway at night that she's with me. And they'll sit there and they'll stare at the truck. And I can sit there and I can just sit there with the truck running for however long you want to sit there with the truck running, and they'll just sit there and go on about their business. Shut the truck off, they'll sit there and go on about their business. Open the door, they'll just stand, they stop doing what they're doing and they look at the truck. And then she jumps over me, hits the ground running. She'll get about halfway across the yard and then they take off every time. They know what's gonna happen because they're there every night. But it's like they're waiting for it. So anyhow, on to the hayfield. All right, I haven't been out here in probably a better part of 2 months, so I've only seen it from the road. But it looks decent from the road. The only spot that I could tell right away might be a little thin is right there on that hillside, which that right there was basically all subsoil by the time I knocked the ridge off enough to be able to get anything or get the grade to where you could drive up and down it. So but up here on top it looks really damn good. There's some weeds coming in, but the alfalfa and grass ought to get most of that choked out after first cutting next year. And this damn radish. I should have, because there's that spot right there. And then this spot right here, which was Shelly's brother, out here being a dumbass, and I'm not afraid to say it. Didn't like the fact that I had put hay out here because it was going to screw up everything for his deer hunting. And he came out here and was doing donuts in his truck and took a bucket of deer plot mix and spread it out here in this spot. I'm assuming out of his window or some shit, because it made an arc. And now I got radish here. There's radish, there was, I don't know, we found the damn can that he dumped it out of. It was tillage radish, red clover, and some other odds and ends, which the clover was what I was ticked off about the most, because clover, horses can eat clover. The problem with clover is if you make it in hay and it molds, because clover is very hard to make as a hay crop, at least on its own. Because if you make it too wet, and there's a fine line between with too wet on clover, the shit'll mold and then it'll make horses sick. So, but luckily it's just that one spot, and then that little patch right there on the other side of the telephone pole, or power pole, or high tension tower. That's what I'm looking for. Well, hell, even back here on this hillside it looks good. Notice the deer have been back here on this, not up there in his little fuck you deer plot patch that he shouldn't have planted. I should have, when I saw that he did that, I should have came out here and disked the damn thing again and got it worked in deep enough it couldn't germinate. It's what I should have done, but I was just trying to get the thing planted. And it's a little thin right here too, where I knocked that pile off over there, dirt pile off over the edge, which that's probably mostly subsoil as well. So have to see how it works out. I might, in theory, it should just start, the actual crop should just start kind of working its way out naturally, but if it does, it might be such a thing where I have to borrow like a 3-point rototiller or something and come back in here and put a good healthy dose of horse manure on that spot and rototill it in and try to reseed it, and probably the same thing up here. Because really, if you look at it, although it's not as bad, but you break down over this hill and kind of this whole low spot right here is thinner than the rest of it. But we'll just have to see how things work out. But you can definitely tell just by how much brown there still is right where I knocked that ridge off so you could drive up and down the hill. It wraps around the front here, and you can tell it goes up to right about there. But it's got grass on it, so it should fill in. There's a little bit of alfalfa in there, so we'll just have to see how it plays out, I guess. But the top itself looks spectacular. There is some foxtail in it because that started coming back before anything else, but the stuff that I planted here intentionally should choke that out, and foxtail tends to not like constant mowing, so it should just die out naturally. But I dare say there's nothing to complain about there. Probably get, by the time it's all said and done and I got time to screw with it, probably get 2 cuttings off of it, and then right after second cutting get some more horse manure piled up and come out and spread more manure on it. And that's probably going to be this thing's fertilizer plan for the time being, is just manure. For as small of a plot as it is, and for as short of a haul as you got to go get it, you might as well just do that and not worry about any granular unless it absolutely needs it. But we'll just have to see how it looks in the spring as to whether or not I take first cutting off of it right away, or if I come out here and brush hog it to get some of the weeds knocked out of it and get a, I mean, if it was going for cattle, I wouldn't worry about it so much, but since it's going for horses, you kind of want a better quality hay. So I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But I'm satisfied with it. And here we are at the last field. I have not been to this one since I got it planted, so you're seeing it out of the ground at the same time I am. Man, this ground is sticky. My only fear about putting weed out here was how... Oop, hold up. All right, sorry about that. Might be going to get some free shit tomorrow. We will find out. But I'm not going to tell you what. We'll see. You'll find out tomorrow either way, because, well, just don't worry about it. Forget I said anything. But this field looking pretty good too. The only spot I'm worried about, and I guess I'm not worried about it, I'm just not expecting it to do a whole lot, is the same spot over here that doesn't do a whole lot, which is the, you know, first like 40 feet that wraps around that woods. Mostly because it's not even the damn trees in this case, it's just that for some reason it lays so damn wet. Try to trundle up here. My boots are getting mud logged. But it's been a fairly decent weekend. Got some stuff accomplished. Well, obviously you know that I got the Snowblade put on the cub. Thursday for Thanksgiving, Mom and Dad went out of town to see my sister. So didn't really have a whole lot going on during the day, and we went to Shelly's mom's her Thursday evening. So during the day I finally got the grain drill cleaned out, so there's no more wheat sitting in it. Got my grain truck power washed, got the 66 power washed, got that little Moline power washed. That did that tractor a world of good. She cleaned up pretty good, so that felt good. Then Friday, Shelly and I went and cut down a Christmas tree. It's gonna be the first year since I was probably like 5 or 6 that I've had a real tree. We used to get them when I was a little kid, and then Mom and Dad, or one or two or both of them, didn't quit. Yeah, I guess there is some wheat there, so it's not all that thick. But anyway, they, like most people, didn't like having the mess in the house, and we finally just went to a fake tree. But I decided I wanted to have a real tree, and Shelly had never had a real tree, so we went and cut down a real tree. Well, there's a Christmas tree farm, not like I say right around the corner. It's not that far from Mom and Dad's. Actually, the people that own it are relation to the people that had the farm where the 2105 came from. And actually, they got the 1755 there that was on the farm where the 2105 came from. So we got a tree, and spent most of yesterday and today getting the house decorated. And I love decorating for Christmas. That's one of the few things that I get into. The first year I didn't do a whole lot. I had a pine tree. There's a pine tree out in my yard next to the road. I put some lights on that, and that was basically the extent of it. And then the next year I bought a thing to put out in front, said Happy Holidays on it. And the next year I bought another thing to go with that, and I put some lights around the front window. And I just been building it every year. And hell, this year we got lights around the front window, lights around the front peak on the house. I got half a dozen things sitting out in the yard. Got lights around the plows up front. Got lights on the hay loader. Got lights on the tree. Got ornaments on the tree outside. Lights on the light pole. Lights on the barn. Pretty soon it's gonna look like Clark Griswold. Turn the lights on and the electric meter just starts going like this. I am thoroughly impressed on this side of the field though, because normally like these first 3 drill passes, just don't do shit, and there's wheat there. You can tell I was getting a bunch of sickle shatter, because if you look, you know, I was just seeing some. Where down here, you got a bean coming up there. If you look, you get a bean coming up there. There's, I think I've got my sickle situation figured out. I called a couple weeks ago. I called Crary. I always thought it was Cary cutting system. It's actually Crary, C-R-A-R-Y. I always thought it was just Cary, C-A-R-Y. But anyway, I called them, and they do offer a 13-foot conversion kit to put to put a Crary Golden Cut cutter bar on a white 13-foot head. Only problem being, it's for a 900 series flex head, and the 900 series went to a wobble box rather than a pitman arm like what my quick cut head does. That being said, I went and was crossing all the part numbers between the two heads to see, and they use the quick cut and the 900 series use the exact same cutter bar. The back plate, the guards, the whole 9 yards is they're the same part numbers, with the exception that the knife bar itself that the knives actually bolt to, it jumps to, in the 900 series, it jumps to a newer style white part number, where the old one is, or in the 700 series, or the quick switch or quick cut parts book, it's the old style white part number, which sometimes they do that shit. They don't update part numbers when they put the books into AGCO parts book. So the only thing that didn't cross was the knife bar itself. The guards, the knives, the main frame of the cutter bar, everything else crosses over. The entire body of the head is completely different. There's no interchangeable parts. Once you get off of the cutter bar, there's no interchangeable parts between a 900 and a quick cut head, but the bar itself looks identical. The only difference being the quick cut head, like what I got, has the big knife drive underneath your ledger plate, or your yeah, whatever, the covers that go between the bar and the pan of the head. And the 900 series head has your ball joint out on the end of the bar that goes to the wobble box. Everything else looks the same, so I don't see any reason why I can't just buy that 900 series conversion kit to put a Golden Cut bar on my head and just modify my sickle drive plate to work with that cutter bar, which shouldn't be that hard because the bolt hole spacing and everything should pretty much be the same. Which need to do something different with my sickle drive anyway, because we had to weld it up, and that's not something you want to keep running because Lord knows when it's going to break. But that would and it's for the whole kit, it was basically it was just shy of $1,500. That was new cutter bar, new sickles, new guards, all new bolts to put the guard, whole 9 yards, whole schmear, which I didn't think was that bad at all. Which I got to do something, because right now, that cutter bar sucks. The one that's on it sucks unless the beans are thick and they are tall. If they're thick and tall, which is your ideal, ideal situation, then it works great. If they're short, if they're thin, if they're down, basically anything that's not an ideal stand of beans, it sucks. So put that regular Golden Cut cutter bar, which has got the standard regular style 3-inch sickles 3.5-inch sickles, whatever they are, and the standard long point guards that go on top and over, or that, you know, encase the sickle so that you're cutting top and bottom both. Should do a lot better. And with that 13-foot head on that combine, I cannot, the cutter bar I got right now, I got to run so slow to get it to cut and not just push beans over. I am basically nowhere near what the capacity of that 7300 is. So right now, the only thing limiting my capacity is I can't run fast enough with that cutter bar to keep the machine at capacity. So get that Crary bar on there and should actually be able to figure out what that machine's capable of, because I'd be able to run at speed. So, and I don't know if I'm going to get it done before wheat or if I'm going to run the bar on it that's on it now in wheat. And because it worked perfectly, it worked great cutting wheat actually. But I don't know if I'll get it on before wheat or if I'll cut wheat with it the way it is and then use the money from the wheat to put the new bar on it before harvest. But either way, it'll have a different bar on it before I go to cut beans again, because this year it was just atrocious. So, but anyway, I know it was just a bunch of video staring at some grass, but several people have been asking multiple times about the wheat and the hay both, so figured before it got covered up with snow again, and plus I needed to come look at it anyhow. But I think we're in for a pretty decent wheat crop as long as we have a decent spring out of it. Like I say, I'm really impressed that there's, I mean, you really can't tell going along that woods. I mean, it looks just as thick as it does out in the middle of the field. So, time will tell. Oh, but what I was saying before I get interrupted by a phone call, the only fear I had of putting wheat out in this field is the fact that it's got woods all the way around. Hopefully that doesn't make it hard to dry down, because obviously it's not going to get wind on it like it would if it was out in the open. But I think wheat's going to do this ground some good. So anyhow, tomorrow I finally got I think I mentioned it already. I finally found the link that I need to put the hydro linkage back together on the Mini. That showed up in the mail yesterday. I got oil for the rear end, or for the hydro. So, and I got it power washed. So I think tomorrow I'm going to work on that, try to make it move. Hopefully it moves. My only fear is that something's screwed up in the hydro on that thing. But I guess we'll find out one way or the other tomorrow, right? And then I'm kind of torn as to what project I want to get going on first. Because the way the weather's looking, and it's going to be in my favor, I don't know. I need to get the Mini serviced so I can use that on fence rows, because I need to get started on fence rows. So like I say, there's 2 of them for sure that I want to get worked, or that I want to work on this winter. And so I don't know if I get the Mini service, which I'm gonna do that regardless, and then start working on fence rows, or if I want to start working on the basement of the bank barn and get the door put in it. And since I got to do concrete work down there, I feel like I should do this. I feel like I should start on that first while the weather's in my favor and it's staying warmer out for setting concrete. So I got to talk to Dad and see what he's going to be for availability to help on that first. And because we already got the concrete mixer out, I need to get that over to my house so that it's there. Because we got a little, Granddad had it for when he had his home remodeling business. Or, well, I guess he built houses too, but Granddad used to do stuff like that, and he had a little, like 1 yard, whatever it is, concrete mixer. So we got one of those, so I can get that over to the house. I have some I-beam and stuff given to me that I'm going to use to make a arch to go inside the doorway to help support the floor joist, since we're taking the floor out from under the main beam, which is partly what I need some concrete for, because I'm going to cut the floor out and pour concrete footings to set that arch on. And then I got 2 more footings I got to pour to replace the 2 posts under the main beam in the center of the barn, because right now one's already been cut out and they replaced it with 2 jack posts, which are in the damn way. And then the original wood beam that's there on the other side is getting kind of doughy. So I got to replace those 2 posts, get the wall knocked out, get the arch put in to support the floor that's there, to support the floor joist once the wall is gone, and help back up the wooden beam that's there. That way it's not trying to span that whole 10 foot by itself. And get a door on it, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but well, the biggest thing's going to be waiting for concrete to cure and getting you almost have to pour the concrete first, get it level, get your measurements so you know how tall to build the arch. And then in the end, you're probably still going to end up having to shim it a little bit once it's in. But anyway, I'm still trying to decide what order projects are going to happen in here, because we got hay equipment to work on, got that barn door to get, or they got that door to get put in the barn, got fence rows to work on, and some other odds and ends. I'd like to get the PTO on the 4150 if time allows. I'm gonna try to find a new carburetor for my 66, because the carburetor has to have a crack in it somewhere, because the damn thing's still flooding if you let it sit for too long. And by too long, I mean like a week or better. If you get it started, it starts hard because the damn thing's flooded. Once you get it started, it cleans out, it runs great. You can let it sit for a few hours, or you can let it sit for a day, go back down, restart it, it'll start just fine. I mean, once you start it, it'll start just fine the rest of the time. But if you let it sit for a week or more, and I've had that carburetor apart 5 or 6 times now, and I cannot find, I have the float level set lower than what it should be, so it's shutting the fuel off sooner. I can't get it. I've had 2 different valve seats and needle valves in it. I cannot get it to quit. It's got to have a crack or something in it somewhere that's just letting a little bit of fuel weep through really, really slowly. So I want to try a different carburetor. So I got to hunt down another 66 carb, which shouldn't be that hard. Got to get the starter fixed on the starter apart and cleaned up on the 1950T, so it'll quit hanging up. I got to get the starter generator fixed on the Sears, so get the damn thing to quit vibrating at high RPM. It's just a bunch of little shit. I don't have any big projects planned for this winter, because I'm trying to save some money, or try to, keep some money in the bank, rather than last year where I've had to build a barn and buy a truck and all sorts of dumb shit and basically shot the entire wad before spring. I'm not screwing with the 2105 this winter unless I stumble across a cheap engine by chance. I'm not looking. I do know where there's a parts combine. Well, actually, my boss knows where there's a parts combine at one of his dad's friends' places. He's going to get me over to look at that at some point, so there might be something come of it, but yeah, I'm not worried about screwing with the 2105. It's going to be mostly smaller. Keep the stuff going, bring the stuff going, or bring the stuff back up to snuff that I got running right now, kind of thing. Unless I can come up with a cheap no-till drill before spring, I'm probably going to go through and reblade the 64, put new blades on it, because I got some disc bearings going out on it, and the blades are getting small and or too small and whatnot. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just reblade that and run it for another season or so. Really don't have a whole lot on the 6180 that needs done. I'm probably going to put new seat openers on it, because there was a couple bearings when I got it that were kind of eh. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot of big stuff that I want to do this winter, because I'm hoping next year after I get wheat cut, the field at my grandparents, I'd like to get tile put in it to take care of the wet spots. So I want to keep some money around for that. I actually got to I should call my tile guy sometime this week and tell him when the ground firms up enough or freezes up enough, he should get over and map that field and give me a rough estimate of what it's going to cost, so I know what we can shoot for. And I got to get a roof put on my house, because the roof on my house is getting rough. So, and there's some odds and ends aside from the door I want to get done to the bank barn. I think I've got a lead on some barn planking from a barn that one of my friends is going to be tearing down to fix the floor in the main part. So that might get done. I don't know. I got a bunch of random small, it's just a bunch of random shit that needs to get done that I've been putting off, is basically what I got going for this winter. So holy shit, I've been talking for way too long. So sorry about that. But I'm gonna get out of here. So I guess that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.